Hello everybody, it's Tony. Not on Aladdin channel, but on my channel. Why, you may ask? Because unfortunately Aladdin is gone. She made this channel for me, and I haven't uploaded anything in about 3 months. So, yeah, let's do something. Today, we have an Unchained deck profile, and honestly, compared to every other deck that I've kind of deck profiled for Aladdin in the last 3 months, this one is the one I've actually been testing the most extensively. And the reason for that is that I wanted to build a version of this deck that wasn't this kind of going second, break your board kind of play. Most versions you'll probably see online like to play things like Dark Rule or Evenly Match, these easy buttons to go second with and just clear boards. I, on the other hand, looked at all the traps and said there had to be a way to build this deck so that you can go first, disrupt the board, and then clean up with the rest of the cards. And the end result was this, and it's been doing pretty well for me. I've taken this to I think a 36-person tournament yesterday, and I got second, only being X1 to the next guy. And at this point, with 36 amount of people, I think I have enough data on this deck to say that this deck is doing pretty well. So anyway, let's get into it. Starting off our deck profile, we have our 3 Unchained twins. We have our Unchained twin Sarama, our Unchained twin Aruha, and our 3 Unchained twin Rakia. Now, for those who don't know what these cards do, all these Unchained twins have a unique destruction effect that lets you destroy one card you control. Aruha lets you destroy a card you control to special himself from the hand. Rakia lets you blow up a card you control as a quick effect, while Sarama lets you blow up a card you control by setting one Unchained card from your graveyard. And this really complements their second effect, which states that if they're destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon one Unchained monster from your hand or deck. And while in most cases you can probably just blow each other up to float into each other, you'll most likely want to float into these two, your Unchained Soul Disaster or your 2 Abominable Unchained Soul. Now, for those who don't know what these do, Abominable Unchained Soul has a plethora of effects. Abominable Unchained Soul lets you special himself from the hand if a card you control is destroyed. When it's special summoned, you can discard a card from your hand to blow up any card on the field, non-targeting. Lastly, if it would be in the graveyard on the turn to be destroyed, on the end phase, it comes back, but it goes back to the bottom of the deck if it leaves the field again, and you can only special summon itself once per turn. However, Disaster, on the other hand, is a little more unique. It lets you target one monster your opponent controls, and then perform a link summon using your Disaster and that monster to summon a Dark Link monster. It also has a nifty effect where if it's destroyed, it special summons an Unchained monster from your graveyard. And just from this, you can probably see how this deck kind of works going first or second. Your opponent can go smack themselves into your monsters all you want, but you'll either be floating into more of your twins, or eventually just one of your big beaters like your Soul or your Disaster. And then you can use those to either break boards and get into the right position on your turn to then continue building up steam. Now, a quick disclaimer for those who've actually watched some of my prior videos on Aladdin's channel, you may be noticed that compared to my last build, I'm now only running 2 Abominable Unchained Soul and 1 Disaster, as opposed to the 3 and 2 I was playing before. And the reason for that is that as I was testing, I quickly realized that regardless of whether Unchained Soul's effect to special summons from hand was good or not, they were still bricks. You never want to be dropping the soul from the hand. You want to drop it from the deck where it's free, and then you can use your resource in hand to blow up cards. And thus, I wanted to cut this card down so I avoided drawing into it. Likewise, Disaster has the same kind of problem. Disaster has no way to special summon itself from the hand. So if I draw 1 or 2, that's extra bad, because at worst, I would have to summon them from the hand to do things. So I cut it down to the point where I want to summon the Disaster when I need it, but I never want to see the Disaster in my hand. And that's where the ratios for this one come from. Anyway, we're also now playing 1 Dogmatic Ecclesia. Now, you may be noticing a lot of decks right now are playing some form of Dogmatic engine, either in the form of the Dear Servants with Ecclesias and Fleurs, or just a bunch of Dogmatic cards that can flash in on extract monsters. I, however, just chose to play the 1 Ecclesia, and the reason for that is because I'm also just choosing to play 2 Dogmatic Punishment. And the theory behind this little mini engine is the idea that I can activate Punishment and sign a Titanclad to disrupt my opponent on my opponent's turn. On the end phase, that Titanclad will then summon out the Ecclesia, which will then get me the second punishment, essentially netting me 1 free monster and the same trap for essentially no cost before removal from my opponent. And this works really well, especially in conjunction with my other Dogmatic cards, because on top of Titanclad, I can even play something like Entis from my extra deck to blow up my own cards if I need to facilitate Unchained plays, or at worst, just get a free body for my next turn. All in all, a great engine. Moving on to the hand traps, we are playing 3 Valor and 2 Ash. Now, in my previous build, I was playing 3 Ghost Ogre, partially because it synergized with the rest of the Unchained deck. However, moving forward into testing, I quickly realized that this deck still kind of struggles with things like Lightning Storm and Evenly Matched, so it was always kind of nice to be able to have some level of disruption to deal with things without putting them on the field. Moving on to our spells, we're playing 3 Abomination's Prison. This is just a rotor for the deck, it's just for any Unchained card, but it also has that nifty effect where if it's destroyed while it's set, you can special summon 1 Unchained monster from the deck. It's essentially another twin in certain cases, but it mostly means that you're never going to brick with this card. We're also playing 3 Pot of Extravagance. You don't really need your extra deck as much in this deck. You can go into it, you may go into it, but you don't always have to go into it. So just being able to, and the ones you really want to go into, you'll be playing the maximum. So even if your extra deck gets ripped to shreds by something like this, you're still fine. And lastly, we're playing 3 Forbidden Droplets, just because effect negation is pretty nice, especially if it's in a spell form. Moving on to traps, we are playing 3 Abomination Chamber and 3 Escape the Unchained. Now, in a going second build, you may be only wanting to play 1 or 2 of these just so I can get your plays off, but in the going first build, you definitely want to have 3, primarily because these are your forms of disruption in the deck. Escape lets you target 1 of your Unchained monsters and 1 card on the field and blow both up. Chamber lets you special summon 1 Unchained monster from your hand or graveyard, and you can use these in a number of ways to disrupt your opponent. For example, I can use Escape to blow up one of my twins and one of my opponent's cards. My twin will then float into something like Abominable Soul, and that lets me discard a card to blow up another card. That's 2 disruptions right there. Likewise, I can use Chamber to summon back one of my Abominable Souls from my graveyard to then blow up 1 card. These cards also have this nifty effect where if they're destroyed while set, you can special summon 1 Unchained monster from your deck, which means that if you open something like one of the non-Sarama based twins, you actually have an even play that leads to 2 disruptions on your opponent's turn, as well as a follow-up play. And I'll get into that once I get through the extra deck as well. Moving on from there, we're playing 3 Torrential. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've watched my opponent just go off in their combo and then just cry when they walk into a Torrential and clearing 4 of their cards on their board. Especially since none of my Unchained cards care if they get blown up. In fact, half the time when I'm acting Torrential, I'm actually setting up my follow-up play for the next turn. And at this point, like, just having that kind of fuck it button, even on the case of an established board, is just so strong right now. Finally, for our last 2 traps, we have our 3 Impermanents, just because hand traps are good. We have our 2 Ice Dragon's Prison, because non-target removal for graveyard and field is strong, and the aforementioned 2 Dogmatic Punishment. All these cards are just kind of like filler to improve the disruption, but just the idea behind having them is pretty good. Moving on to the next deck, we're playing 3 Unchained Soul of Rage, partially because we're playing Extravagance. Now, for those who don't know what Unchained Soul of Rage does, it essentially works the same way as Disaster, but it's a quick effect on your opponent's turn. You can target 1 special summon monster your opponent controls during their main phase, and then perform a Link summon for a Dark Link monster using that monster and your Soul of Rage. And in most cases, you'll probably want to go into your Unchained Soul of Anguish, which is just a carbon copy of Disaster, but just a Link monster. It's a Link 3. And they all have that nifty effect where if they're destroyed in any way, you can add back a Fiend from your graveyard to your hand. And there's some pretty cool combos you can do with that. And in most cases, the rest of your extra deck just kind of revolves around using these cards to get into other Dark Links. For example, you're playing the 1 Dark Codebreaker via Swordsman, just because he's the largest Dark Link 2 monster you can make with your Rage. You're playing 2 Unicorn, because sometimes blinking from your Rage into a Unicorn is a double disruption all on its own. You're playing 1 Abomination, Unchained Abomination, just because this guy lives in breed destruction. When anything is destroyed, he blows up a card. But in most cases for your Link 4s, you'll probably want to go into your Axis Code Talkers. See, one of the cards I actually won from the tournaments playing this deck was the Axis Code Talker, where I went undefeated. And the idea behind Axis Code Talker is just so much stronger in this deck, purely because you can go from an Anguish into an Axis Code Talker, and if you're doing it on your turn, you're most likely getting rid of something that may float. Which means that if your Talker is going to be chaining 1, targeting your Anguish, you can actually just straight up chain block them out of their effects. Finally, we're playing the 2 Titanclad because we play Punishment and Extravagance, and the 1 Entis because we play Titanclad, yeah. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was a combo that you can do that essentially netted you even number of cards while ending up on 2 disruptions and a follow-up play. And I'm going to get into that now. What you need for this combo is either one of the Unchained traps and any non-Sarama based Unchained twin. And the way this is going to work is, let's say for example, I open the Escape and an Aruha. What I can do in this combo is I can first set my Escape. I'm going to trigger my Ruha to blow up my Escape. Escape will now trigger, allowing me to summon out my Unchained Twin Sarama from the deck. Sarama can then activate, letting me set the Escape again to blow up the Aruha now. Aruha will now trigger, allowing me to summon out my Abominable Unchained Soul. From there, I proceed to link summon both of these to summon out an Unchained Soul of Rage. And now, essentially what that means, now I've ended up on both a Rage and the Escape. And what that really means, on top of the 3 cards I have that could also be Disruption, is this. On my opponent's turn, I can go Soul Rage effect, link away to either make a Unicorn, or most likely the case, I'm going to make an Anguish. Now, from there, I can activate, let's say, the Escape as a form of disruption, blowing up my Anguish and another card to get rid of something else. And as a result of that, that Anguish can then allow me to add my Sarama back to my hand. Now, I have a way to normal summon Sarama in the following turn, then reset one of my traps and blow it up again to summon maybe another Abominable Unchained Soul and go for massive damage and another Soul of Rage in my following turn. In the case of, however, where I instead open a chamber, per se, I can do something different. In this case, I can go Soul of Rage, and that link that way to either the Anguish or the Unicorn. Let's say I do the Anguish in this case. And then instead of doing the play where I would perhaps pop that Anguish, I can instead use my chamber to summon back that Soul of Rage in my Abomination's Soul in my graveyard, special summon, and then blow up a card that way. Either way, you end up with at least a minimum of 2 disruptions, but in this specific case, you now end up with 5k damage regardless. Anyway, that wraps up our Unchained deck profile. Honestly, I'd like to thank everyone who's actually supported me and kept looking for this channel. I'm probably going to be starting a lot more regular content as I get more used to it. I'm still getting used to things like editing and filming and lighting, so this is kind of a rough draft for me. But what I'm thinking is I'm probably going to be doing like a monthly series where I try to build a deck from scratch and optimize it for a final deck list. And as well as a few discussion videos talking about things like probability and optimization for deck building. So look forward to that. Regardless, my name is Tony, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.